There's a heavy snowstorm. The cold penetrates his bones. His legs are almost knee-deep in snow. Experienced hunter Joe LaBelle makes his way through the forest, covering his face from the headwind. Any other person would have already fallen and screamed in despair, but not Joe LaBelle. He can survive in any circumstances and always knows what to do. Right now, he's heading to one of the villages in the far north of Canada. This small settlement is located on Lake Anjikuni. The inhabitants of this village are Inuit, indigenous people of North America. Joe hasn't eaten or drunk for a long time. He needs a good sleep and a hot meal, which he hopes to get from the hospitable Inuits. Through trees and a white haze, he notices the silhouettes of tents. Smoke is coming from some houses. Joe will probably get there in time for lunch. He reaches the village, and at this moment, the wind calms down. The blizzard has ended. The hunter speeds up and goes toward the village, located along the frozen lake. It's strange, but there are no locals anywhere. Probably everyone is just sitting in their houses, waiting out the blizzard. "Hello!" Joe says loudly, but gets no response. Oh, great! Smoke is coming out of this tent. Joe knocks on the wall, but no one opens it. He knocks a few more times and goes inside. The little tent is empty. All things are in their places. There's a piece of cloth with needles and thread on the table. Firewood is smoldering in the fireplace. It seems that people have just left this place. Joe goes into the next tent and sees the same picture. All things are in their places, but there are no people. Joe walks past the tents and sees a pit where a bonfire once burned. There's a rope above it, with the meat that the Inuit were cooking hanging on it. For some reason, they didn't eat it. Lake Anjikuni is part of a chain of waterways. Here, the Inuits fished and traded various goods. Usually, there are many people here, but now something has forced them to leave their homes. Why did they leave their things behind? And where did they go? There are no tracks around the village. All the sleds are in place. The Inuits have even left their dogs here, and dogs help them to hunt and ride sleighs. No one will leave warm clothes and dogs here when moving away, especially in severe weather. Joe LaBelle knows all this, so he concludes that something terrible has happened here. His body is shaking, not from the cold, but from fear. After going around the entire settlement, he finds not a single soul. Terrified, he leaves the village, heads for the nearest telegraph pole, and sends a message to the police. After a while, more and more people arrive. The police are trying to find traces of missing people and figure out what has happened, but there's nothing. Near the village, they find an empty grave. During the ceremony, the Inuits placed stones around the burial site. The rocks around the open pit lie untouched, which means it wasn't an animal that dug it up, but who or what needed it. About 30 people lived in the village, and they're all gone. Local residents from neighboring villages can't help, since they have no idea what has happened. The only thing that the police have noticed is unusual blue lights. In this area, the northern lights are a common phenomenon. People living here regularly see a glow in the starry sky. But the police have seen something else, pulsing blue lights. Also, other hunters have witnessed something similar. They say that some strange things were flying in the sky. This all happened in 1930. It's been almost 90 years since the disappearance of the village, and people have created a bunch of theories. The most popular of them is an attack of an extraterrestrial civilization. According to this theory, the blue lights in the sky that the locals and the police saw were spaceships. Some believe that one ominous night, these ships flew to the settlement and took away all the people. In addition to these sci-fi versions, there were also more realistic ones. Internet users have found out that Joe LaBelle didn't have a hunting license. maybe he wasn't a professional and made it all up. But at that time, many hunters didn't have a license, so Joe's words may be true. But if we try to find out where all this information came from, we'll see that the primary sources were books and some newspaper articles from the 30s. But none of them can confirm that the mysterious story of Lake Anjakuni is true. Perhaps this entire story was made up. Now let's leave the snows of Canada and head for the hot plains of India. In this big country, there's one sinister village where people also disappeared without a trace. This happened in the first half of the 19th century. Still, locals avoid this place even now because they believe that invisible evil forces live there. Let's check and find out what happened to the village of Kuldara. It's located in the district of Rajasthan. To get there, you can use a taxi to get to the nearest village or city. The village is located far from other settlements. It looks deserted. There are only ruins. It looks like archaeologists have recently dug this place out of the ground and left it here. But this is not an ancient city. The village was abandoned more than 200 years ago. But up to that point, this place had been thriving. Kuldara was a large village. Local people were mostly farmers. They sold their agricultural products. And then, one night, everything changed. People abandoned their homes and stuff and ran away from there. No one knows why they did it, and no one knows where they went. Nobody has ever seen the inhabitants of Kuldara again. Apart from tourists, almost no one comes here. The locals are sure that the village is cursed and is the center of paranormal activity. If you ask residents of other nearby towns or read the information on the internet, you'll learn a couple of legends about this place. One popular version says that people left this village because of a lack of water. However, this version doesn't explain why the residents did it overnight and left their things behind. According to another version, the villagers ran away to save the daughter of the Kuldara chief. One local ruler fell in love with her and wanted to marry her. He threatened the locals with grave consequences if the girl rejected him. The ruler gave them 1 day to make a decision. The residents disagreed with such a requirement. As a sign of solidarity, they decided to leave the village together with the chief and his daughter. But if this is true, why did no one else see these people? They must have escaped to another settlement. In addition, they needed their things on the way there. The stories of Kuldara and Lake Anjakuni have one thing in common. People left a comfortable and safe place for an unknown reason. A similar story happened in Ireland with a small village on the island of Achill. About 40 simple houses made of stone and straw were located along the valley of Keem Bay. The village was mentioned in documents dated back to the 1830s as a group of small buildings. But today, there's practically nothing left of it, except pieces of walls and small mounds of ground. People from other settlements don't remember this village, but we know about it thanks to the records of travel writers. They describe the incredible beauty of this place and the village in their diaries. Students of the local archaeological school tried to find the answers. They started excavations and discovered that the villagers could have left the village because of hunger or some disease.
All right, so let's start our journey with one of the most famous and scary vanished villages. It's located in India, the district of Rajasthan. This is Kuldara village. Unlike other abandoned places, this one is difficult to get to because the locals won't want to take you there. People are afraid of this place and try to avoid it. You can't get a taxi and drop off near this spot. The driver will tell you where to go. You won't find any traces of civilization nearby. The village is located in a hot desert area, but when you get close to it, you'll feel an unpleasant chill down your back. You won't find any vegetation because of the heat. There are only ruins of buildings and sand-covered roads. It seems as if you're walking through the excavations of an ancient city. But Kuldara is not so old. It only vanished in 1825. Before this time, the village had been thriving. It was almost a town consisting of many small settlements united into communities. Residents were busy with agriculture there. Plus, they went mining and extracted valuable gypsum rocks and minerals. But suddenly, everything changed overnight. For some unknown reason, people abandoned their homes and ran away. No one knows why, and no one has ever seen the residents again. Locals living in the nearest areas are sure that this place is cursed, so they never come close to it. They think this is the center of power from the other world. Some people feel sick here, others claim to see phantoms, and still others experience irrational fear. But tourists like to go there. The simplest and least scary vision says that people left the village because of the lack of water. Still, this version seems weird. If there had been a lack of water, people would have planned the change of location instead of running away in a hurry. The second version is way more mystical. There's a legend that one cruel ruler collected large taxes from this community. He fell in love with the daughter of the Caldera chief and threatened that he would collect higher taxes if the girl refused to marry him. He gave her 1 day to make a decision. None of the residents agreed with such a requirement. As a sign of solidarity, they decided to leave the village. Those who don't believe in all these rumors can spend a night in a tent there. Chances are you'll hear someone screaming or feel someone walking and knocking on your tent. Nah, just kidding. Our next village is in the U.S., in the state of Pennsylvania. More precisely, it's not even a village, but a borough called Centralia. This place looks totally lifeless. Burnt trees, dried grass, empty buildings. Almost all the roads here have huge cracks. People sprinkle them with gravel to decrease the amount of thick smoke that's pouring from the ground all the time. This abandoned place has been burning for more than 50 years. No wonder this place reminds of something. The authors of the horror game Silent Hill got inspiration from this town. Centralia was a mining town with shops, cafes, libraries, and happy residents. People worked in the mines to get anthracite coal. They used one of the underground tunnels as a landfill for garbage. And then, in 1962, according to the popular version, they decided to get rid of garbage by burning it. The plan failed. As soon as the garbage caught fire, it spread throughout the mine. Then, all mining work in the town stopped because of the increased level of carbon dioxide. Residents didn't manage to extinguish the fire, and it started to spread underground throughout the whole city. Roads began to heat up. The soil became poisonous. Thick smoke slowly filled the streets. People were evacuated from this place. By 1992, Centralia was completely abandoned. The town looks ominous, and some people believe it's not just because of the fire. They believe not all people managed to evacuate, and their phantoms are still walking through the burning streets, waiting for someone to finally put an end to this eternal fire. Just imagine a prosperous, beautiful village where people do agriculture on fertile land and bake delicious bread. And then, bang! Everything disappears. There were only traces on the ground and a couple of bricks left from beautiful stone houses, mills, and chapels. Huge fertile fields became abandoned, and no one knows why. Well, welcome to the English village of Gainsthorpe in Lincolnshire, or rather what's left of it. From above, you'll see earthen ramparts on the grassy field, the outlines of roads, sunken hollows, and barely distinguishable contours of the walls of houses and barns. If you come here, you may not even notice the traces of the village. It's just an unusual green field. But in the 17th century, life was thriving here. Let's try to solve this mystery. The first mention of this place dates back to 1086. I wasn't around then. Since that time, it was prospering. There were about 19 fertile fields, a chapel, a mill, a bridge, and a manor house where the lords lived. In total, there were about 25 buildings. From the records dating to the 16th century, you can find that quarries appeared in the village. That is, this place not only got wealthy, but also kept pace with progress. Then, by 1616, the village had become completely abandoned. Scientists are still looking for an answer to this question. Some believe that something terrible and mystical happened to the village. One of the main hypotheses explaining what happened is the plague. Another version is that Gainsthorpe still couldn't catch up with progress. In the 17th century, there was a transition from rural to urban life. Industrialization had begun. Many young people left their native villages to search for a better life. Some believe that groups of robbers and thieves settled in the village. They turned Gainsthorpe into their base and eventually plundered it all. The exact reason is still unknown, but the good news is that, theoretically, the village can be returned. Specialists can reconstruct the ruins and recreate agriculture. The hardest part, though, is to find funding. A similar fate befell the small village of Achill Island in Ireland. About 40 simple houses made of clay and straw were located along the valley washed by Keem Bay. And it was just a fantastic place to live. Coast, mountains, crystal clear water, and rich soil. The village was founded in 1838. Now, there are several mounds of ground and small pieces of walls left of it. Locals living in neighboring settlements don't remember this village. Or maybe they know something, but don't want to say anything to anybody. Only travel writers described it in their diaries as a place of serene beauty. Now, many towns nearby still exist, but why did this one disappear? An inexplicable phenomenon that sweeps entire villages off the face of the earth? An unknown, mystical, scary force? If there is nothing fantastic about this village's disappearance, then why don't people build any new houses here? Perhaps they're afraid of something. So, the local archaeological school students decided to find the answer to this question. They started excavating the village in search of clues. They found out that some kind of trouble happened to this place in the middle of the 19th century, but it's not known exactly what. At that time, a terrible period of famine came. Perhaps people simply left their homeland to find food elsewhere. Anyway, work on excavation continues, and the students intend to uncover the truth. In the 20th century, more and more villages became abandoned all over the world. The main reason is the relocation of residents. Young people don't want to live away from the modern world, but older adults can't leave their native place, so they stay there as the last residents, and then, several years later, when they have bought the farm, so to speak, villages get abandoned. Another problem is access to medicine. In some places, people have to drive tens and hundreds of miles to the nearest doctor. But many villages are still thriving. Some towns receive more funding and have developed agricultural businesses. Besides, not everyone likes city life. Often city administrations specifically distribute free land to people in rural areas so that they can build houses there.